I found out they deleted my system, my life's work, because some 28-year-old thought my folders were too messy. The message hit me like a brick. I was peeling potatoes for dinner when an old colleague called in a panic. Their freight system had gone haywire, delivery estimates were all wrong, and orders were crashing into chaos. "Did you know your old replacement deleted the entire routing logic?" she whispered. He said he didn't understand it. I didn't answer right away. My hands just stopped moving. The water still running over half-peeled spuds. I had given that company 31 years of my life. Now my absence was costing them millions, and lives, too. One hospital shipment got rerouted 4 states away. And the young man they trusted over me? He had no idea what he was doing. So I stood there, staring out the window at the last glimmer of sun, and asked myself, what would happen if I walked away for good, or if I didn't? My name is Eleanor Grant, and if you're wondering how someone my age ended up in the middle of a high-tech logistics meltdown, you're not alone. Just a year ago, I was the head of routing systems at a Texas-based freight company, one of the largest in the region. I didn't have a fancy tech degree or a Silicon Valley resume. What I did have was experience. 3 decades of it. I designed a dynamic freight routing model that saved the company millions per year, some of it built late at night on my own time, on a personal laptop, while everyone else had gone home. It wasn't pretty code. It wasn't trendy, but it worked. Until it didn't matter anymore. A new CEO came in, fresh, young, and full of buzzwords. He wanted to modernize and bring in a new generation of thinkers. He never even looked me in the eye when he called me into that glass conference room. He said I was being offered the opportunity to transition into an emeritus mentorship role. Unpaid, of course. I wasn't angry. Not visibly. I smiled, shook hands, and walked out with my box of things and a flash drive in my pocket. At first, I thought I might actually retire. I started teaching part-time at a local community college, mentoring a few eager students who still respected the word experience. But then I heard what was happening back at my old company. Their new AI-powered system was failing spectacularly. Routes were misaligned, cold shipments spoiled, and emergency supplies got misrouted. And that's when Skyroute Tech called me. They'd heard whispers about the crash, and rumors that I had built something far more reliable. I met their VP for coffee and showed them PathLogic, my redesigned system, built from the bones of the old one, but cleaner, smarter, and 10 times faster. They hired me the next day. My new team was sharp, respectful, and eager to learn. Within weeks, our clients were saving 40% in fuel costs and shaving days off delivery times. But then came the cease and desist letter from my old employer. They accused me of stealing their IP. I handed the letter to my lawyer along with timestamps, metadata logs, and sworn affidavits showing that every line of PathLogic was written outside company hours, on my equipment, and completely independent of their systems. The letter vanished quietly. But the damage to their reputation? That didn't. So here I am, 61 years old, leading a logistics transformation at Skyroute and mentoring women over 50 through a program I started called Grant Collective. And the company that let me go? They're bleeding clients. Last I heard, they were reassessing their leadership direction. Funny how things come full circle. But this time, I'm not looking back. I've got a new team, a stronger voice, and something no one can replace. Wisdom earned the hard way. They didn't even let me finish my coffee before showing me the exit. That's how 31 years ended. No thank you. No handshake. Just a young executive in a slim-fit suit telling me that my role had been transitioned. I remember staring down at my lukewarm mug, still sitting on the conference table, while the words blurred around me like static. I'd given that company more than half my life. Designed systems from scratch. Worked late into the night, holidays too, just to keep shipments running smooth. And now, they were tossing me aside for some Ivy League whiz kid who didn't even know how to read a dispatch grid. My name is Eleanor Grant, and this is the story of how they tried to make me obsolete and why that was the biggest mistake of their lives. At first, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went home, changed into sweats, and did the one thing they didn't expect. I got to work. Not out of bitterness, but out of instinct. I had built that routing system over a decade, on my own time, on my own hardware, with my own logic. My husband used to joke that I could track a container ship faster than the Navy. So I poured that quiet rage into rebuilding. I called the new version PathLogic. It wasn't just smarter, it was bulletproof. Predictive rerouting, weather adjustments, fuel optimization, everything they'd promised with their AI gimmick, but never delivered. Then the calls started. First from an old colleague, then from two vendors. Something's wrong, they said. Orders are off. Routes are delayed. Nobody knows how to fix it. The new system was unraveling. The kid they brought in to replace me? He deleted entire modules because they looked outdated. What he didn't realize was those outdated pieces were the foundation, the code that kept their fleet on time and their margins lean. One hospital shipment was rerouted 300 miles off course. A pharmaceutical load spoiled in the sun. The panic spread fast. And I watched it all from my kitchen, cinnamon rolls cooling on the counter, phone buzzing like wildfire. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just waited. Because I knew a call was coming. And it did. Not from my old employer. They had too much pride for that. No, this call came from Skyroute Tech, a rising logistics firm based out of Chicago. They'd heard whispers about what I'd built and wanted to see it. I flew up the next day, ran a private demo, and walked out with a signed contract and a small team of real professionals who listened. We deployed PathLogic in 3 states that month. Fuel costs dropped by 40%. Delivery windows tightened. Vendors cheered. Clients came back. My name? It started to circulate again, but this time in rooms where people actually listened. Then came the cease and desist. My old company accused me of stealing intellectual property. Claimed I'd used their system as a base. I sent them a package, neatly documented timestamps, Git logs, IP history, witness statements, and even copies of internal policies confirming off-hours work was mine to keep. Their lawyers backed down in silence. The only thing they released publicly was a generic statement about ongoing improvements. Meanwhile, I launched the Grant Collective, a mentorship initiative for women over 50 in tech. Every week, we meet over Zoom, share code, advice, and occasionally a glass of wine. We're not just building software, we're building resilience. So no, I didn't go back. I built forward. And for the first time in years, I know exactly where I'm going, and no one's deleting my path ever again. The subject line read, potential opportunity, but I could smell the desperation through the screen. It had been 8 months since they fired me. 8 months since I walked out of that glass-walled conference room with my head held high and a box of dusty plaques and coffee mugs in my arms. At 61, they said I was outdated, too rigid, unfit for the future of logistics. They gave my job to a kid who had never routed a shipment during a winter storm, and they called it innovation. I was expected to disappear quietly. But instead, I built something better, something they never saw coming. And now, that same company that discarded me was emailing me, offering a return as Chief Technology Officer. What they didn't know was, I wasn't the same woman they'd let go. And I sure as hell wasn't coming back to save them for free. My name is Eleanor Grant, and if there's one thing I've learned in this industry, it's that experience isn't flashy, but it's the only thing that holds when everything else falls apart. After they replaced me with someone half my age and a quarter of my wisdom, I went home, rebuilt my system from the ground up, and called it PathLogic. It was faster, cleaner, smarter, designed with the intuition only decades of failure and course correction could teach you. And when a smaller firm called Skyroute Tech asked to see what I'd been working on, I gave them a private demo. They signed me that day. 3 weeks later, we were operating in 5 states. 6 weeks in, we landed our first national vendor. By the end of the quarter, the results were undeniable. On-time delivery up 38%, fuel waste down 45%, and client satisfaction reports reading like love letters. All while my old company spiraled. The CEO vanished from public appearances. Their freight dashboards were riddled with bugs. One insider even leaked a screenshot of a live route map showing shipments crisscrossing like spaghetti across the Midwest. I didn't gloat. I just kept building. But then came the offer. They wanted me to return. Lead our new technological rebirth, they wrote. Bring your vision back home. As if I had just stepped away for a vacation. As if they hadn't humiliated me in front of my peers and replaced me with someone who thought redundant logic meant okay to delete. They offered a generous bonus, a corner office, full autonomy, even a press release crediting me as the original architect of their success. I almost laughed. Instead, I forwarded the email to my attorney. She replied on my behalf with a single line, MS. Grant is open to discussing a licensing deal for PathLogic starting at $6.8 million upfront, plus royalties. Because if they wanted what I'd built, they could pay for it. No more undercutting. No more invisible labor. No more stealing ideas dressed up as collaboration. They responded, of course, with panic. Their investors were demanding answers. Clients were jumping ship. And word was spreading across the industry. Eleanor Grant is back, and she's not playing nice anymore. But here's the thing. I didn't want revenge. What I wanted was recognition, and the freedom to build without being talked over, overlooked, or politely dismissed. I wanted to show that just because a woman crosses 60 doesn't mean she's finished. It means she's just now hitting her stride. I never accepted their offer. I didn't need to, because the day that email landed in my inbox, I was standing in a downtown office surrounded by engineers who looked at me not as a relic, but as their leader. We toasted our third major contract that afternoon. And as I lifted my glass, I thought back to that cold, dismissive boardroom and the way they looked past me. They don't anymore. And they never will again. I never imagined my name would be trending because of a freight routing algorithm, but that morning it was. I had just sat down with my tea, quiet morning, blue sky over the trees, when my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Emails, texts, LinkedIn notifications. One message simply read, "You need to see this." I clicked the link and there it was, front page of a major logistics trade journal. Industry giant admits error, credits former engineer for groundbreaking routing system. Right under the headline was my name, Eleanor Grant. After 31 years of silence, dismissal, and being called too old school, I was finally getting credit. But it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Because behind that press release was a storm I'd seen coming long before anyone else, and the damage was just beginning. You see, 8 months earlier, I had been quietly let go from my job. They called it a strategic restructure. Said they were looking to build a more agile, forward-thinking logistics division. Translation? They were trading experience for flash. I'd been leading system optimization for over 3 decades, mapping routes, minimizing fuel waste, developing logic models before machine learning was even a buzzword. I didn't have a tech startup background or a slick portfolio, but I had results. I had built the backbone of their system, on my own time, using my own equipment, with the kind of care only someone who truly believes in their work can give. Still, they handed my role to a 28-year-old with a master's in theoretical modeling and 0 field experience. He deleted legacy code without a second thought, called my documentation clutter. Within weeks, the system began to fail. Not all at once, but gradually, like a slow bleed. Delayed deliveries. Misrouted cargo. A critical shipment of cardiac supplies sent to the wrong state. My old team scrambled to cover up the problems, but the cracks got wider. Clients started asking questions. Lawsuits were whispered about. And somewhere in all that mess, someone remembered the name Eleanor Grant. By then, I was with Skyroute Tech, quietly leading a team of engineers who not only respected my experience, but relied on it. PathLogic, the system I'd rebuilt from the ground up after my so-called retirement, had rolled out to 5 major clients and was saving them tens of thousands per week. No bells. No PR stunts. Just clean code and clear results. But when my old company's largest client pulled out of negotiations and moved to Skyroute, the pressure cooker exploded. The board demanded answers. That's when the leaked emails started surfacing, Conversations between executives mocking my age, dismissing my warnings, even joking that she won't be able to keep up with version control. And just like that, everything turned. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to say, "I told you so." I just kept doing the work. And the industry noticed. That same week, an old blog post I'd written years ago about valuing senior voices in tech was rediscovered and shared over 100,000 times. Suddenly, podcasts wanted interviews. Trade shows were inviting me as a keynote speaker. My inbox flooded with messages from women in their 50s and 60s saying, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one." But the moment that truly stopped me cold, it wasn't the headlines. It was walking into our office one Friday afternoon and hearing my team, young, brilliant, kind, pause their chatter and start clapping. Someone had printed the article and taped it to the break room door. I stood there, stunned, as they cheered for me, not for revenge, not for the downfall of my old employer, but for everything I had quietly built while the world told me I was done. I wasn't done, and I'm still not, because this isn't just my story, it's ours. For everyone who's ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told their best work was behind them, I'm here to tell you, your best chapter might still be ahead. It didn't hit me until she looked me in the eye and said, "No one's ever listened to me like that before." Her name was Marisol, 54 years old, 2 decades of experience in operations, pushed out of her last job when the company restructured their talent pipeline. She sat across from me clutching a weathered black portfolio, hands trembling just slightly. We weren't in some shiny conference room, just a modest office inside Skyroute's new mentorship space. I'd opened it a month earlier, the Grant Collective, a quiet initiative meant to give women like me a place to start again. I wasn't looking for applause. I wasn't chasing redemption anymore. I had already won the contracts, earned the respect, cleared my name. But this was something deeper. Because now I wasn't just rebuilding systems. I was rebuilding people. And for the first time, I realized the thing they'd tried to erase in me was exactly what made me unstoppable. You know, when I first launched PathLogic with Skyroute Tech, I thought that would be my closing chapter. My victory lap. After all, I was 61, supposedly past my prime. But I had a fire they couldn't stamp out. They tried. Believe me, they pushed me out of my job after 31 years, tossed me into early retirement, and gave my role to someone who couldn't distinguish a load order from a lunch order. I kept quiet. For a while. I taught part-time, tended my garden, and then I got back to work. PathLogic exploded in success. Clients returned. Numbers soared. My name was restored across an industry that once saw me as obsolete. But success has a strange way of revealing what really matters. And what mattered now wasn't just proving them wrong, it was proving to others like me that they were never broken to begin with. So I opened the doors to the Grant Collective, a place where women over 50 could come, pitch their ideas, dust off their skills, and know, without a doubt, that they were still worth listening to. I didn't care about resumes. I cared about grit. And that's exactly what I saw in Marisol. She had a shipping container tracking system scribbled in a spiral notebook, handwritten, page after page, meticulously detailed. She'd never built a prototype, never presented to a boardroom, but the logic was sound. She just needed someone to see her, to believe in her. So we rolled up our sleeves and started mapping it out. Within 6 weeks, her method had reduced our pilot team's overhead by 15%. It was simple, elegant, and undeniably hers. I watched her blossom. At first, she'd whisper her thoughts in meetings, doubting herself every step. But now, she holds the room. And every time she presents her work, I feel something in my chest, something proud and fierce and grateful all at once. Because for so long, women like us were expected to step aside, to make room, to fade quietly. But not anymore. The irony? While the Grant Collective thrived, my former company was still stumbling through crisis after crisis. Their new systems were plagued with bugs. Staff turnover reached record highs. And just last week, One of their lead engineers, someone I mentored years ago, applied to join my team. I don't turn anyone away, not even from there. Everyone deserves a second chance. That's what this place is about. And now, as I stand in this room, full of charts and laughter and bright-eyed brilliance in every age group, I feel something I never expected to feel again. Peace. Not the kind that comes from winning, but the kind that comes from lifting someone else up. So, if you've ever been told that your best work is behind you, don't believe it. If they've made you feel invisible, let me remind you, they don't define you. And if they ever try to erase your worth, just remember, you can always build something they can't erase. You can start again. Just like I did. Just like Marisol did. And we're only getting started. The moment I saw their logo on the envelope, I knew they weren't just apologizing. They were surrendering. The legal seal was crisp, embossed, expensive. They had spared no cost to make it look official. But no matter how glossy the paper or formal the font, I knew what this was: capitulation. My old company, the one that fired me, discredited me, and accused me of stealing my own work, had finally come full circle. They were offering to license PathLogic, the very system I had built on my own time, with my own hands, after they tossed me aside like yesterday's spreadsheet. But it wasn't the $6.8 million upfront fee that made me pause. It was the last clause on the final page. We agree to issue a public statement acknowledging Ms. Eleanor Grant as the original developer of the foundational routing system. For the first time in years, I closed my eyes and exhaled, not from exhaustion, but from justice. My name is Eleanor Grant, and I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. When they silence your voice, document everything. I did. Timestamps, IP logs, Git history, email threads. Evidence that I had written every critical line of code on my own machine, under my own roof, long after their office lights had gone dark. When they accused me of intellectual theft, I didn't panic. I didn't run online. I handed the facts to my attorney with one line: let them try. Their legal attack unraveled within days. Worse for them. An internal whistleblower leaked emails showing that one of their executives, my replacement's manager, had once told me to work on the algorithm after hours to keep it off the books and under budget. That one sentence destroyed their entire argument. Suddenly, they weren't dealing with a disgruntled former employee. They were dealing with a woman armed to the teeth with proof, poise, and patience. And the industry was watching. Trade magazines ran headlines like, "The woman they fired now owns the system they need." My LinkedIn profile exploded. Clients began canceling contracts with them and coming to Skyroute, where I now served as Director of Intelligent Systems. Investors demanded board meetings. Employees started resigning. One by one. The leadership fell. First the CEO stepped down. Then the head of operations retired. Abruptly. My former manager deactivated his LinkedIn profile altogether after a leaked video showed him losing his temper in a boardroom when someone asked, "Why didn't you listen to Eleanor?" They never did. Until now. But here's the part they never expected. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I wanted it on record. So when their legal counsel slid the final agreement across the table, I didn't smile. I nodded once, signed it, then handed them a small envelope in return. Inside was a printed screenshot of a quote I had once posted online during the hardest week of my life. "They can take your title, your office, your name off the door, but they can never erase the work you built with your soul." I walked out of that meeting, not victorious, but whole. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of iced tea, listening to the cicadas hum, and read the official statement on their website. It said, "We acknowledge Ms. Eleanor Grant's independent development and thank her for her contributions to the logistics industry. My name, my work, in their words. And for everyone out there who's ever been gaslit, overlooked, or forced to watch someone else take credit for their blood, sweat, and brilliance, this story is for you. We are not disposable. We are not outdated. And we are not going anywhere. Because the future doesn't just belong to the new. It belongs to the prepared. And I was ready all along. The moment I heard the applause, I almost didn't believe it was for me. It had been years since I felt this kind of recognition, not for putting out fires, not for working weekends no one noticed, not for quietly cleaning up someone else's mess. This was different. This was joy. My name is Eleanor Grant. And if someone had told me 5 years ago that I'd be standing on the rooftop of a downtown tech firm, surrounded by former students, engineers, and leaders who looked up to me, I'd have laughed. Because 5 years ago, I was being forced out of the company I helped build, replaced, discarded, and told my time had passed. But tonight, the skyline glowed behind us. And all I could think was, they tried to erase me, and instead, I became unforgettable. Let me take you back. After 31 years in logistics, I was restructured, out of my job by a board that valued buzzwords more than battle scars. They brought in a young CEO with slick words and a weak understanding of what made the company tick. He replaced me with a bright-eyed protege who called my system antiquated and wiped half the logic files within his first week. The results were disastrous. Shipments rerouted incorrectly, perishable goods spoiled in transit, and clients walking away in frustration. The system buckled under the weight of ego and inexperience. And I quietly began to rebuild, not to get even, but because I couldn't help it. The work mattered too much to let it die. That work became PathLogic, a smarter, faster, cleaner routing system. I licensed it through Skyroute Tech, where a team of sharp, respectful engineers gave me the one thing I never asked for but always needed: room to lead without apology. We rolled it out to 5 states, then 9. Clients returned. Word spread. And my old company? They panicked. They tried to sue me. Failed. Then they begged me to come back. I declined. Because I had found something better. As PathLogic took off, I launched the Grant Collective, a mentorship program for women over 50 in tech, those like me who'd been pushed out, passed over, or politely sidelined. And week after week, I watched these women blossom. I saw the spark return in their eyes. I saw them pitch ideas with confidence, lead teams, even start businesses of their own. That, more than any headline or keynote, was the moment I knew I had truly won. But I won quietly. While my old employer unraveled, leadership resigning, staff turnover spiking, clients defecting, I stayed focused. I didn't clap when their shares dropped. I didn't gloat when a trade journal ran the headline, "Too late to fix what they broke." Because the truth is, it was never about revenge. It was about respect. And reclaiming mine on my terms was enough. Which brings me back to the rooftop. That evening, we had just closed our 4th national contract. My team insisted on celebrating. There was music, laughter, and a table full of food someone's daughter had catered from a local soul kitchen. As I stepped out of the elevator, someone shouted, "She's here." And just like that, everyone turned. They clapped. Not because I saved them, but because we built something together, something honest, inclusive, and powerful. One of my engineers handed me a small gift box. Inside was a keychain engraved with the words, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build while you're here." I swallowed hard. Because that's the part no one tells you when they show you the door. Sometimes, the best thing that ever happens to you is being pushed out of the wrong room. So, if you're watching this, and you've been dismissed, downsized, or disrespected, don't count yourself out. You are not finished. You are not forgotten. And you might just be getting started. They called me redundant. I called it Chapter 1. The words flashed on the screen behind me as I stepped out onto the TEDx stage, bright lights washing over a sea of curious faces. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from everything this moment represented. 1 year ago, I was sitting alone in my kitchen, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, wondering if I'd ever be seen again. Now, I was standing on a stage in front of hundreds, sharing the story they once tried to erase. My name is Eleanor Grant, and if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. They underestimated the wrong woman. Let's rewind. After 31 years in logistics, 3 decades of building, troubleshooting, leading, I was handed a smiling pink slip and told it was time to make room for new ideas. My ideas, apparently, were too old, too structured, Too slow. They replaced me with a rising star barely out of grad school who thought my folders were messy and my code outdated. Within weeks, shipments were being rerouted to the wrong states. Perishables spoiled. Hospitals complained. But I wasn't there to fix it. I had been dismissed. What they didn't realize was that I hadn't stopped building. At night, long after the lights in their fancy new office dimmed, I was at my dining table refining a smarter system, PathLogic. I didn't make noise. I didn't seek revenge. I just made something better. Skyroute Tech gave me the chance to launch it. They gave me a desk, a team, and most importantly, respect. PathLogic became a quiet revolution. It brought down delivery times, cut fuel costs, and did exactly what I said it would years ago, only this time they were listening. The rest unraveled fast. My old company tried to sue me. Failed. Tried to poach me. Failed harder. Eventually, they issued a public apology, acknowledging my original system and licensing PathLogic under my name for a price. But the real victory wasn't the money, or even the recognition. It was what came next. See, I didn't just want to build systems anymore. I wanted to build people. That's how the Grant Collective was born, a mentorship program for women over 50 in tech, business, and logistics. Women like me. Women with entire chapters of brilliance behind them, but nobody willing to turn the page forward. We started with 3. Now we're 37 strong. One launched her own freight analytics startup. Another created a shipping cost calculator now used in 3 regional warehouses. They didn't need fixing, they needed someone to remind them that they were never broken. And that brings me back to this stage. I looked out at the audience, young faces, season 1s. Some nodding in agreement, some blinking with disbelief. I told them about the meeting where I was let go, how I was expected to transition into mentorship with no pay, no office, no voice. I told them about the night I cried in my car because I didn't know who I was without a title. And then, I told them the truth. The moment I stopped chasing the past, I started building the future. When the talk ended, I didn't expect what came next. A standing ovation. People lined up just to shake my hand. One young woman, barely 25, hugged me and whispered, "You just gave me hope." That's when I realized this wasn't my final chapter. This was a new beginning. They tried to define me by my age, my gender, my quiet. But the thing about quiet women? We build empires in silence. So if you're watching this, whether you've been overlooked, pushed out, or told you're no longer relevant, hear this loud and clear. You're not finished. You're just getting started. And your next chapter might just be your most powerful one yet.